Welcome to Paranormal Connections with your host, Christina George, only on DTMWickedRadio.com.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Paranormal Connections, and I am your host, Christina George. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Oh, it has been such a crazy 2014. I want to say Happy New Year to all of the listeners out there, since this is our first show of the 2015 year. I will tell you, I think this year is going to be, it's almost strange because I feel like it's going to be spectacular. There's going to be a lot of really mind-blowing things that come out and that are revealed to all of us. But I also do see like concerns with our weather, especially during the winter time this year, different things like that. But I feel like 2015 is really going to be one is going to be very powerful, and so I really want people to pay attention. Of course, when we talk about, my show, the one thing that I love to do is bring people on that have their own personal experiences. I do bring on, paranormal teams and authors of books that have been written about their true accounts of paranormal experiences. But I don't really go for the so-called paracelebs or anything like that. I try to stay away from that because, for me, I feel like these people are no different than you and I. For us out there, my listeners who are investigators, I know there's a lot of them, a lot of people that have had paranormal experiences, and so they listen to the show to kind of get validation of things that they went through, hear other people's stories. And nobody really out there is out there looking for, the people that are having experiences are out there looking for any kind of fame, fortune, or attention. And it always kind of makes me laugh when people label me, of all people, as a paraceleb, because I feel like, who am I? I'm a radio show host. I'm a psychic, and being a psychic is nothing new for me. I've grown up being a psychic my whole life. This is just how it is. It's just now that we're coming into a time where we can be more open about it. And the paranormal investigating, again, been doing it, I would say, for a good part of my life. It was just always, as an adult, kind of somebody knew somebody that knew somebody that knew me. So it's not like, hey, I've got this group. It was something that was very, very underground at the time. Now, again, we can be very, very open about it, but just because people are out there putting out evidence, putting out all this stuff, I don't feel, or that are in the field, I don't feel that makes them a paraceleb just because they speak at a conference or they wrote a book or they've got a radio show or any of these things. Again, they're just ordinary people like you and I. But for me, when people start getting, more focused on, the fame and the attention, it kind of takes away from everything else. So I really focus on people that are just very down-to-earth people that, usually get in this field because of their own personal experiences. I say this over and over, I think, just about every show. But with every guest you see, normally if they, ever had paranormal experiences, it kind of piques their interest, and then they really try to find out what's going on. And right now, with so much information that is available, so much, it's just overwhelming sometimes, people can really get out there and now kind of be their own investigators. And then when paranormal investigating shows came out, a lot of people thought, wow, I'd like to do that. And so, again, we formed groups and of people with like-minded interests. I used to remember saying, oh, my gosh, it would be so great if there were more people out there investigating so, we could pull together more evidence and, show it to the public and things like that. And when people say be careful what you wish for, boy, is that true. Because now it's like the floodgates of hell have opened, up. Everybody wants to be an investigator, and now it's really not about the field for so many. It's just all about, them and, having some stardom and some recognition. So again, I really, for this show, love to bring on people that are just very grounded, very down to earth, great people that I have met along my journey in the paranormal. And it's crazy, all of the different people I encounter and work with. Some I've met at conferences, and we work together afterwards, sometimes with other radio show hosts, sometimes when I'm out investigating. You know, you just never know where you'll meet somebody, you know. And so it's been a very, very interesting ride for me, and I will tell you, even though there's been a lot of ups and downs, I don't think I would change a thing, because I have made and met some amazing people that have turned into, you know, what I call good friends. And tonight, my guest is no different. Tonight, my guest is Scotty Myers, and I will tell you, I'm going to bring him on a minute, and we're going to kind of talk about as well how we met it more in depth in a case we did together. But Scotty's just so down to earth. I think of anybody, when I met him, I went to Oregon to do an investigation. I was invited out there kind of by a skeptic, and it was kind of funny because I had spoke with this person at a conference. We both were speakers, and I got invited out. And Scotty was part of the team that I was working alongside. And when I was introduced to him, I was told that, you know, he was kind of their audio guy. They did all the EVPs and things like that. And then we had another man, Jonathan Burgess was there, and he was in charge of kind of, he also did a lot of, like, techie stuff. He had all these things that he creates and invents himself and works with. It's very, very interesting, and he also does a lot of rebirth language technology. So where they're getting the EVPs and they're playing them backwards. And I've talked about this on the show in the past, that it's a very, to me, it was kind of a new thing. I mean, I always knew about, you know, playing records backwards, but I never thought about playing EVPs backwards. But during my investigation out in Oregon, I will tell you, it was very, very interesting. And Scotty got some very, very interesting and compelling EVPs while we were investigating. And I think that that's kind of where anybody who was a skeptic of things I was picking up, or what I was saying that they were wanting, the spirits were wanting or needing and needing our help, I knew that there was a question in their mind of a few, but once we got the EVPs, and as well, Jonathan Burgess got some reverse language technology captures as well, saying the same thing and validating it. But I'll tell you, Scotty has always been there. If I've asked him, hey, I've got an EVP, do you think you could check it out? You know, he's done that for me. And just the amount of work that he puts into this is amazing. He's still, to this day, he calls himself a hobbyist, quote unquote, a hobbyist paranormal investigator. And, he does work with groups, but he does it independently. And he's an electronic voice phenomenon specialist. And I will tell you, if for the people out there that have groups, or people out there, that you get stumped with some EVPs, or you get stumped with something like this, like Scotty's your go-to guy. He's just amazing with this. But he created also a website, and it's called the Official EVP Museum of Disembodied Voices. And he has taken all these EVPs that he has collected over the years and put them on this website for people to go and check out. And he had told me that I think last year, because we've known each other for a few years, but last year, I think it was when he was telling me he was working on this and he was trying to, get everything together. There's a lot of work, a lot of information had to be put in there, and he completed it. So we were talking the other day, and he had sent me the link, and I checked it out, and I'll tell you, you want to go and take a look. So tonight after the show, or even if you're in our chat room, you're checking out, go and check it out. I'll get I'll pull up the website and put the link in the chat room. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead right now because Scotty does have a bio, and everybody knows I usually go through the bio about this time. But with his bio, it is so many personal experiences that have kind of led to all of this that I think that in the 2 hours tonight we're probably going to be able to cover, all of them. But, just for, a couple of things, he has definitely experienced the shadow people phenomena. And so many of us, as well have. So I think that'll be definitely very interesting, what we want to talk about tonight. He's had at least 2 vivid so-called alien abduction encounters. And one of them was in connection with his mother, who's now deceased. So something interesting with that, and again, we've talked about this on the show a few times, but a lot of times, and one of the reasons I made the show name Paranormal Connections, is that we have seen over and over and over that a lot of people who have experienced paranormal activity sometimes have also witnessed UFOs, also been abducted. There's a lot more connection between the fields, I think, than most people know or would like to even believe. Because back in the day, the paranormal only investigated. Paranormal was everything. Anything that was not normal to regular, society or to the scientific field was paranormal. And so that's what we did. Everything was encompassed under one umbrella of paranormal. Once the show started coming out, the paranormal was now considered ghosts and spirits, possession, things like that. Then ufology became, was just its own field, completely separate. And then cryptozoology, like with Bigfoot and Mothman, all those things, were in another group. And the paranormal people, don't believe in, the ufology and things like that. They can believe in spirits and ghosts, but they just can't believe in aliens or abduction or any of that stuff exists. Then you've got, the people who have been abducted, they believe in that. And they're a little bit more open to the paranormal stuff because many of them have experienced it, but they're not so much on believing that all of these hauntings and things exist. And then you've got the, cryptozoology and Bigfoot people. And, like they all don't see eye to eye or, believe in each other. So it makes it very, very fractured, but it is, in my opinion, very, very connected. So, Scotty, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know we've been talking now for like 2 years about you coming on the show.
Oh yeah, I remember. I posted I was kind of proud of it. The shadow being phenomenon. After hearing some shows on Coast to Coast about it, it's like, well, hey, a lot of people know about this. So I typed up kind of my story on it, and I sent it into this web page that's out there. It's called the Official Shadow People Archives. Somebody, you guys ought to look that up sometime. But anyway, it got published in there, so I put a little blurb in my Facebook page, and all of a sudden I got a letter back from you or a note back from you saying, hey, I'd like to have you on my show sometime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember, and then I asked you at Fat Cities when we were doing the investigation as well. I was really interested in what you were doing, and I said, I'd love to have you on the show sometime because my listeners, they just absolutely can't get enough of EVPs. I think for many people it's like that, don't you think?
Yeah, that's correct. And also the anomalous and images that we get on film sometimes when we're on these investigations are paranormal images. And so I showed you a few of those that I had. Although, I get more EVP, I'm better at that than I am at the photography thing. While I had you there, I started showing you a few of the pictures I gathered throughout the years, and we're pretty fascinated with that, too. So.
Yeah. Well, and as I was saying, and I'm sorry I took up so much time, talking about, bits and pieces of all this. But, to me, again, when I talk to you, I always think, gosh, you're just such a nice guy because you are really not interested in the limelight. You are real. I mean, you did this in a favor for me, but you really are just about getting the information and the data out, correct?
Yeah, it stems from my mom. It's a hobby, and you don't talk to everybody about it. I'm pretty open about talking about this stuff, like in front of crowds and stuff, like at Starbucks out on the patio. I'm typing up these things, getting ready to put together this web page that I have, and everybody knows what I'm doing, but it's like they're out there smoking their cigars, and, oh, God, Scott said, that paranormal stuff again, and, joking around, tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. And boy, once you get those people, though, one-on-one, they kind of come up, and it's like, hey, I got something I want to tell you, and this is for real, and, I'll swear that I never said it, but I'm going to tell you about it. It's like everybody's got these stories on, that they contain, but they're looking for the right person to tell. But when they're in a group, everybody kind of chimes in. It's like, oh, God, that again, kind of thing. But one-on-one, if you open yourself out there and let people know, you're kind of like a magnet to these stories, and they start coming in, and you hear some very fascinating things. And a lot of it kind of pertains to the things that have happened to me. So then, boom, that brings on another conversation, and then we start digging for more and more. And so, I've amassed a lot of good information out of people just by doing that. So I'm not ashamed to talk about this stuff at all anymore.
That's awesome. Well, and again, I see a lot of people that, get such a fascination and get so fixated on the paranormal and to gather information. And it usually always comes back to, very personal reasons. They get into it, yes, they, enjoy doing what, they're doing, and it is kind of like a rush when you, get the evidence and things like that. But for many, it really does come from their own personal experiences, and especially like if you're our age, there wasn't all this information back then. So it was really all just trying to figure it out on your own, kind of a trial and error thing.
There was always Charles Fort and some of his publications on anomalous stories and events, raining sardines 40 miles inland and those kinds of things, and, the streams turning to blood and whatever have you. I used to read a lot of the Charles Fort stuff when I was younger. I remember that. And, there was huge UFO flaps in the early 50s, and I was born in 58. But,
right.
Some of these things started happening, and my mom, I started talking to her about these things that had happened to her. And so I really started digging into it. And then, in the late 60s, when I was like 12 or 13 years old, there was a lot of information out there. And Fate magazine, I think, is number one. I mean, that's got to be the best publication out there for these things. And it's primarily what I like to read in Fate magazine is the stories that are, from the readers that are sent in that they publish in there. It's kind of like listening to Art Bell, and how he used to handle the callers. I really love the way that he handled the callers because he was truly fascinated by this stuff too.
Well, yeah.
And
stories
I know
different.
what you're saying. They're looking into it more now with, the scientific equipment and things that they have now, that were in the 2000s, like you're saying. But back then, the stories were still there, and that they were most likely a bigger mystery then than they are now, because now you've got all these groups and all this information out there, like you're saying. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
I've been auctioneer for 30 years, so that's my primary source of income. So I tend to ramble on a little bit. So I'll slow down here and let you take back over again.
Oh, no. We'll both be
sure.
talking a mile a minute. It's quite okay.
Okay.
We won't lose anybody. It'll be fine. So let's go ahead and, start out at the beginning because, you did talk about, like your mom. You started out with experiences, with your mom, and a little bit in your bio. You talk about your abduction. So let's start there, and then we'll kind of just move forward and keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, it does stem from my mom, but so I was born in 1958, Tacoma, Washington. And, what's funny is I have no memories at all. It's like everything's been wiped out of my memory of anything that ever happened from when I was 5 years old from the time I was born, of course, you don't remember a whole lot of things, but until I was 5, absolutely no memories to go back on at all. And when you get to talking to people, they can account things, that happened when they were 5 or 4, but I have absolutely nothing. It's odd. The only memory I have from when I was 5 years old is that I remember my mom had divorced from my mom had divorced at the time from my biological father. So she was working to support us, and we had quite a few different babysitters that we went through. But I remember everybody sitting around this black and white TV, and it was the Kennedy assassination had taken place. And I think that kind of bookmarks my first memory that I can actually remember, and it was when I was 5, because of all the emotion that was in the room. You could just feel it. And, at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on. I was 5 years old. I mean, I knew that the president had gotten shot in a few things, but, at that age, you don't even know what a president really is. But because of all the emotion in the room, that bookmarked that day as a day I can go back in my files and actually remember. It's probably my earliest memory, and it was at the age of 5. So after that, when I'm 6 years old, we lived in this 2-story house in Tacoma. It was my great-grandfolks. It was actually a 3-story house. It had an attic on the top, too. And my mom had divorced, like I said, my biological father. So we lived there, and she was trying to get back on her feet. And, my brother, who was 1.5 years younger than me, she had the 2 of us to support. So we're living with our great-grandfolks, and the house had the front yard. It had a big pasture in the back. It was about 1.5 acres. And there was horses, as I remember after this point, there was always horses in the pasture. And the front of the house went down to the road. It dipped down a hill, and there was a tree line there off to the west. And so you could look out the window of the dining room and the kitchen, and here's this tree line and this lawn that goes down to the road, but it goes real steep down to the street there. Well, anyway, this one evening, all of a sudden, bang, I'm there in that dining room, and the house is completely dark, and I'm standing there alone in this dining room. And it looks like, have you ever seen an arc welder welding on some metal? You know how it flashes and, it sparks and everything, and, and it's kind of sporadic a little bit, but there's this flashing going on. And I'm looking at this through the window, and I view in on, it's like a cigar-shaped craft or something hovering just above the tree line, outside to the west of the house. And I'm looking at that. Now, normally, a kid would be scared of something like that.
Right.
But I was fixated on it, and there was this, it was lightning bolts coming out of it. Now, you know how when you watch a lightning storm in the sky, the lightning always goes in one direction and then disappears. Well, this thing was illuminated, and it had these lightning bolts that were going out on all sides of it, and they were going out a ways from it and then coming back into it. So it was like expanding and contracting. And I'm just fixated on it, and it's flashing inside of the room there. And I had, how when you're at the store with your mom, and if you get out in front of her at the store and she's like paying for the groceries, and she instructs you, hey, stay right where you're at until I get there, kind of thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I had a telepathic kind of thing that was like that, but it wasn't in my mom's voice. It was wait for your mother. And so I just stood there, and I was watching this thing, and I don't know how long, but going back through my memory banks, I can see it right now in my mind's eye. I just kept looking and looking, and I was following the instructions that I was given to wait for my mom, just like you would when you get out in front of her when she's paying for the groceries. Wait right there until she, approaches you, and then boom, you walk off together. So I'm standing there, and then all of a sudden, this electrical charge to this thing kind of slowed down a little bit, and to my left, where the kitchen is, it was dark in there, except for when this thing was flashing. Every once in a while, you could kind of make out some of the furniture and the lamps and stuff in there. It kind of came through the wall, in a little small area. This electricity kind of thing came through the wall. It's hard to describe, but it was kind of shaped. Oh God! It was kind of shaped like a ball or something. and it had a tail on it, and it had this electricity in it, you know, these sparkles and stuff, and it was coming through the wall, and it ended up next to this lamp. And I'm looking over. Now, you know, if you're a kid, normally that would startle you, but remember, I had these instructions. You're waiting for your mother.
Right.
And so I'm looking over there, and all of a sudden it started turning into the form, and started growing of a silhouette of a human being. You could see the silhouette of a human outline standing next to this lamp, but all around it was this aura of this electricity still going on.
So it was making that silhouette?
Yeah, it wasn't like the lightning bolt like things that were coming out of the craft out the window. It was like sparkles and stuff.
I know exactly. I mean, I can picture exactly what you're
I
describing.
hope I'm describing it right. But this plasma ball thing with a tail that came through the wall started turning into this next to this lamp. Now, have you ever seen a cartoon where they depict, you know, like a cartoon character gets hit by a lightning bolt or sticks its finger in a light socket or something like that, and you can see the skeleton of it when it's getting electrocuted and stuff in the cartoon? Well, the dark part that was the outline of the human, you could see that kind of happening. You know, I could see the rib cages and the bones and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, boom, all that sparkling or whatever, the energy on the outside of this form stopped, and there was my mom. And she was standing there, and she had this, you could kind of see her now. The craft had left, or at least it wasn't, shooting out this electricity outside of the window. I looked out there, and I could not see it because, you know, it was nighttime. It was probably midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. So it was no longer there. I looked back at my mom, and she's looking around like she's puzzled, you know, from what I could see on the expression on her face. And, you know, it was partially lit in there, but not very much. And she's looking around like she was puzzled, and then all of a sudden she saw me and kind of focused her eyes and says, "What are you doing out of bed?" And it was like nothing ever happened when she saw me. So she took me by the hand and took me back into the bedroom. My brother and I had bunk beds, and put me back to bed like she had hours before, and boom, that was it. But I remember every detail of what I just described to you, and it's a little more in there. But this was in the Tacoma area, pretty close to Fort Lewis Air Force Base is where this house was, because my great aunt took me back and showed me that house and said, "Do you remember this house?" And it all kind of came back to me when I took my grandmother's ashes up to Tacoma here a few years ago. So the house is still there, and I've got pictures of the house. But anyway, that was the first odd incident where, and bookmarking any of the memories I have, that was when I was 6 years old, that I remember that. And that kind of led to some other things after that. Now, boom, I can remember a lot of things after that, kindergarten and my mom meeting my stepfather, and they took a trip to Hawaii, and they were sending us postcards, and then they got married, and then we moved into a house and all this stuff. And I remember everything from that point on, you know, like you're supposed to in your childhood. So it's kind of like a bookmark or something. I'm not sure.
Right.
But anyway, it was the first experience, and I don't know, maybe you want to talk for a minute, but it kind of led into these shadow, they call it the shadow people phenomenon.
Exactly.
I call it the shadow being phenomenon because I'm not sure if they're really people or not. But
yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And how old were you when the shadow phenomenon started? You started seeing the shadow people.
Oh, it was okay. So we lived in the house with my great grandfolks, and then my mother met my stepfather, who became my stepfather, and we moved up to the Edmonds area when I was 7, up to the Edmonds, Washington area. So that would have put us like 35 miles to the north, because he worked for a Pontiac dealership up there in Linwood.
Okay.
So I started seeing him at that point when we moved up there, and it was, going back, it was from 7 until 12 years old that I saw this phenomenon. And it was sporadic. It was probably, I'd say 10 times, but it was like a loop. And if you want me to describe, what I saw, I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because
Okay.
I think a lot of people have had, or at least a lot of people that I've talked to, have reported, seeing these shadow people. So, again, is another very interesting topic. So, absolutely.
Okay. Well, the reason why I'm going back over this stuff is because this is what led me into being interested in paranormal and all that stuff. So that there's a lot more different things that have happened. But beyond that point now, remember, I wasn't terrified at all of the events that I told you. Right. And it kind of haunts me because every once in a while I'll go back to that time where I saw that craft outside the window and my mother rematerializing through that, whatever it was that came through the wall. And, those instructions that I had, it was not my mother's voice. It was just kind of in your head that you've got these instructions, wait for your mother, don't go anywhere until she comes back kind of thing. And I just remember all that vivid.
You know what's something that's interesting, Scott, is that when you got this, so-called instruction, number one, you didn't question it. Number two, you did exactly what
you said. It was natural. It was right. Following your mom's instructions. Hey, quit messing around with the candy bars while you're waiting in line to pay for your groceries.
Well, right. Kind of thing. But, most people, if it's not their parent, telling them something, they'll look at them like, yeah, right, who are you to tell me don't do anything, But, so you didn't recognize it, and then for you, like you said, for it to be just so natural, like you knew you were supposed to, it is very interesting to me. And that you were so close to a military base is the other one.
Yes, we did. It was real close to Fort Lewis Air Force Base. And then once, I started getting close to adulthood, started talking to my mom about these experiences of the shadow people things, because we never did talk about that experience. It was like, I don't know. It was just like, you know what you know, and I know what I know. But we did talk about it later on. And
right, but just not back then.
Yeah, but at the time when you're a kid, it's like, oh, okay, well, my mom didn't look like she was alarmed about anything. It was just, it was unusual, to say the least. But anyway, I started having these encounters with these shadow beings. It was odd. It was after that point we moved up to, and this happened in two different houses when we lived up in the Edmonds, Washington, and the Richmond Beach area. We lived in two different houses during the duration of time from when I was 7 until I was 12. And what's odd is, I stopped seeing them once I turned about 12 years old. But up until that time, because you and I talked, over the phone here for several hours a couple of weeks ago about our auras, seeing human auras around human beings and animals.
Yes.
It was right around that time that I was unable to see those too, and I'll go into details on that. But I was able to see those things naturally too, up until the time I was 12. So we start losing some things once we get to those certain ages, I guess. Once your feet get planted on the ground and you got individuals or people that you talk to about this thing. What the hell are you talking about? Kind of thing. And
right.
For a while, you start thinking, oh, geez, and you can't see them anymore.
Right. You start questioning yourself. If you're crazy or, like what's going on, because if nobody else is experiencing this, why are you the only one? And again, we look back at the time, like, where you say, like, you and your mom at that time when you were young didn't really talk about it. Like, you both knew, like, had your own personal experiences and what, like, you would go through, but it was something like you but you just don't talk about it. And that's what a lot of people did.
I can't wait to, it's like getting something off your shoulders. I mean, I've talked to some people about it, but I can't wait to tell you about, fill you in on her story that I went on to find out. But anyway, I guess going in line, so I'm around 7 years old, and so my mom's married again, and my stepdad, he's a great guy. His name is Pat, and he's like my real father. I don't question much about what happened between my mother and my biological father. It was kind of a hard point with my mother, so I just accepted him as my father. So we moved up to the Seattle area, and my mom was always afraid I'd fall out of the bed. Now I had, if I slept in the top bunk of the bed, which normally if you got two brothers, the older brother usually sleeps in the top bunk. But I remember I always had to sleep in the bottom bunk because my mom was afraid that I would fall out. For whatever reason, I guess when I was a baby and stuff, I used to kind of fidget around, or a toddler or whatever. So anyway, as the story goes, we had these bunk beds, and so my brother would always sleep on the top and I'd sleep on the bottom. And in these two houses, there was, only one one window in the bedroom, and so we always had the curtain closed, and there was, a faint light illuminating through the curtain from the street lamps, in the distance and stuff. And all of a sudden, I just wake up, and I'm wide awake. I'm not dreaming because this has happened several times. But I'd wake up and I'd just kind of look around in the room, and I'd look, and it was almost like, that light illuminating through the curtain was kind of a movie screen for this thing. You could see the outline of it. Now, here's the odd thing is it's a perfect outline shadow of a man standing in front of the window. And it's just completely dark. I mean, you could not see any features on it at all. It was like taking a cardboard cutout of somebody and painting with a dull black paint. You could make out any features at all other than just the outline. And it was always a man, and it would be still when I'd first see it. And it actually had a brimmed hat, which is the weirdest part of all, is you could see where it had a brimmed hat and possibly some long shoulder-length hair. And it would be standing there, and as I'd look at it, it would start swaying a little bit, so you could tell it was actually kind of moving, and it was like it was kind of checking out the room and stuff, and then all of a sudden it would start creeping real slowly to the bed. And, I'd play possum when I'd see it, and I'd sit there and I'd rub my eyes and, make sure I'm awake and I'm not seeing things. And it would slowly start coming to the bed, and I remember towards the bed, and I remember, my heart rate going up, and I try to be quiet, play possum, and just hope it would go away and rub my eyes and stuff. And it would approach the bed, and it would just hesitate for a second, like maybe it was looking up at my brother, because my brother would be, like a shoulder length to it. And all of a sudden, you could see it crouching down and then sticking its head, underneath the top bunk, like it's trying to come over to look at the features on my face. And I'd sit there and I'd let it get that close, and all of a sudden, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I'd scream, and all of a sudden, bang, like it was scared to death of me or something, and you could see it, too. It wasn't like it just disappeared. It would go through the wall just real quick. And so, naturally, my folks would come into the room, turn on the light. What's the matter? What happened? And, my brother was always totally oblivious to this. He would, to this day, if I talked to him about it, he wouldn't know what I was talking about. But
But it doesn't always, not everybody always experiences this stuff. And that's, something that a lot of people question. And sometimes that's what makes, you as a child question yourself. Because, the adults are, can't give you any information. And everybody, teachers, everybody tells, church, everybody tells you this stuff doesn't exist, as if you're making it all up, and then on top of it, you've got a sibling that you sleep in the same room with, and I did as well, and, they didn't experience any of this stuff, and, they're like, well, you weren't telling me, that you were experiencing all this stuff. Well, so it didn't happen. You're just trying to get attention now because I would know if anything like that was happening, which is BS because I have a sister who does that to me.
Well, know exactly what I'm going through.
Yeah.
What I went through, so.
Yeah. It's so not the case.
But it would play out like a loop because the way that I described it to you, that's the way it always came about. But it happened at two different houses, and it wouldn't be like, every night or, maybe there was a couple of times that they were close together and it was like 1 month and then the next month it happened, but sometimes spread out. But it was always the same scene. And my folks would always come in startled. And then after a while, after it started happening quite a few times and I'd describe it, my dad would go through the motions and pretend like he's looking in the closets and under the furniture and there's nobody here and, that kind of thing. And then, bam, we'd go back to bed. But my mom, after 5 or 6 times, I think she was waiting for me to get to be old enough to start kind of picking my brain about it because she had her accounts to tell later on when she started realizing this was going on. And it was like a deja vu for her because she had the same things happen, and it stems from a site, I'll go into details about it. I really want to, about what happened to her when she was a teenager, and I think it all kind of connects. once you get further on down the line, these things all kind of connect in
Right.
an odd way. But, as these things started happening, like I said, the shadow being phenomenon thing happened until I was like 12. But I was startled by those. I mean, I was just terrified with those encounters that would happen. Not with the first memory that I have other than the Kennedy assassination, which was the craft that I saw outside of the house and the rematerialization of my mother and all that. That didn't. I was calm. That was all calm. I mean, normally a kid looking out the window and seeing lightning and all these things going on, at 6 years old, it scared the hell out of them. But that didn't startle me at all. But these shadow people things, boy, I remember those really. I even banged my head a couple of times on the top of the bunk and put a pretty good goose egg on the top of my head just because it scared me so bad.
And the thing is they don't have any. Well, just like for these shadow people, correct. The one that you saw, like, it's just a complete silhouette of a shadow of a person, correct? Like you can't see any per se facial features.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because you would expect that maybe if you could see some scary face or something.
Every once in a while, a reflection of the real dim light coming through the window would at least shine on its nose to where you could see something, or its forehead or something. This is just like you take and cut out a piece of cardboard of a silhouette of a man with a hat and spray painted with a dark paint and just put it there against the wall, and that's what it looked like. It was just odd, but it moved, and it moved like it was trying not to disturb me, and that it was curious about me. And then when
maybe checking you out.
Yeah. But I think there's a resolve to that. If you'll remind me towards the end of the program.
Sure.
I think I've got a resolve to that situation, but it played out like a loop. It was odd. But as those things started happening, I started getting closer to being 12 and getting close, to where I can understand and talk, hold a good conversation with my mom. She started gradually starting to talk to me about these things, and she had the same things happen when she was younger, and how it terrified her, and hers was a little bit different than mine. They played out a little bit different, but she'd actually seen sometimes, during the daytime. But she had, I don't know, I guess I should go into detail on this, but one account she told me about, whoops, I just want to make sure I don't unplug my phone here. She had some interesting things happen. Now, the Kenneth Arnold sighting was, when he was flying over Mount Rainier in the Cascade Range, right? And that's kind of when UFO flaps started becoming a part in the media and all this stuff. It was in 1947. And my mom, she was born in 1938, and when she was younger, I think it was from when she was 12 until she was like 17, she belonged to a horseback riding club, and during the course of time, she only had one horse at a time, but she had like 5 different horses throughout this period of time, and she belonged to these horseback riding clubs with these youths, and they had some great summertime programs, I guess. Now, this is at the base of Mount Rainier and the Cascades and stuff. They'd go on these chaperones on these horseback riding adventures in the summertime and camp out and stuff, and they had adults with them and all this. And my mom would every once in a while hear these stories, because this is like in the early 50s, like maybe 1950, 51. There's a lot of stuff about UFOs, because remember in 1952 there was a huge flap and they were over the White House and all that kind of stuff. And she started reading a lot of these accounts, and it fascinated her for some reason. Why she couldn't explain why she was so compelled, but she's fascinated with the prospect of there being life on other planets and these things. So she's just interested in that stuff. Well, when she's on these horseback riding with these horseback riding groups, and they go out in the summertime, you can see the stars better back then than you can now. The sky was, less smoggy and all that stuff.
Oh, right.
So anyway, she had this one special friend, and as I recall, she had 2 different friends that were named Carol. I can't remember the last name of the one friend, but they had similar interests in this stuff. So when they'd go on these campouts, her and her friend would make sure that they set up their tent and their sleeping bags and stuff off away from the campfires from the rest of the group. the rest of the group would talk about earthly things and stuff, and they'd sit out there and look up in the stars and say, hey, we want to see some of these UFOs. Look at how beautiful the stars are. And as time went on, I can't remember how many times out, but they would both sit out there and kind of wish that. They started actually seeing these lights flying in formation as if...
so they were summoning them, actually.
Yeah, as if, they were able to read their thoughts or show off to them or something. And so she's a teenager, probably 14, 15 years old when this started happening, and it was like they were fascinated with it. It was like their own little secret. They wouldn't tell the rest of the group about it. And it became a regular thing. So when they went out on these adventures and they'd camp out, my mom and this friend of hers, Carol, would go off, set up their camp away from the rest of the group, and every once in a while somebody from the other group, oh, aren't you going to come and roast marshmallows or whatever? No, that's okay, kind of leave them alone. And they'd see these lights flying in formation, some of them, by themselves, but every night they'd start seeing these things. And after a while, my mom said, and it's a pretty regular thing, during the course of a few years, and of course they didn't camp out in the wintertime, it would be in the summer. They started making a game out of it, and they would actually instruct these things when they'd see them to fly off in various directions, like, hey, fly off towards Mount Rainier. And it would follow their directions, and it was like, wow, it became a game between them, and it was kind of a secret that they both had from the rest of the group. But my mom wouldn't cuss if she had a mouthful, and believe me, she's looking right at me when she's telling me these accounts.
Right.
And it's just fascinating to me, and it's almost as if these things could read their minds or whatever, and was trying to show off to them like there were two special people down there that were willing them to do these different things, and they were granting their wishes. Well, anyway, as time went on, my mom, all of a sudden, they saw one, and it approached, and it started showing off. It was kind of zigzagging slowly above them and stuff, and, and after a while, they kind of got used to this, and so my mom came up with this, hey, Carol, let's do this. Let's both concentrate real hard and will it to come down close so we can get a good look at it, because, they were always pretty high up there. It was just one this time. So they both, in the voice, as my mom says, we will you to come down here. Come down closer. We will you to come down. And all of a sudden it stopped. It started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And my mom says, oh, my God, I got scared. It scared the heck out of both of us. I mean, we were almost ready to get up and run. But it came down so fast that they didn't know any better to get away from it than to hide in their sleeping bag. And it was right down on them, I guess, when they did this. And so they hid in their sleeping bags. And that's all my mom remembers from that night.
Okay.
I woke up, her and this Carol talked about it, and it was like, my God, I came down, what happened? Do you remember anything else? No, I just remember hiding in the sleeping bag, and that's it. And they both couldn't remember anything after that point. And so I guess this friend of hers says, hey, I don't want to do that anymore. It's kind of a taboo thing or whatever. And I don't want to do this anymore. Let's quit doing that. Because I remember it coming down and approaching us, and that scared the heck out of me. So she didn't want to have anything to do with it or talk about it with my mother again. So my mom agreed. So, of course, they continue on with these trips that they make every now and again, these campouts and stuff with this horseback riding group. And there's two different groups, I think, that she belonged to at the time. So they're out, and they're just camping like everybody else, close to the fire and being like everybody else, and they quit doing those things. And my mom would have these sleepwalking episodes where she would turn up missing from the campsite. The next morning, they'd all, where's Jackie? I don't know. And they'd send out these search parties looking for her. This is after that incident I just told you about. Right. And they'd actually get concerned because there were, adult chaperones. And sometimes they'd find out she was missing at nighttime, and they'd go and flag down a car and have them shine the headlights out in the forest there and stuff and see if they could find her. And they had flashlights and stuff. Well, normally they'd find her, right away. She'd be not too far from the campsite, but she'd be barefooted and kind of disoriented. And they'd bring her back, and she couldn't remember how she got there. And that she wasn't, it wasn't that she was frightened of being out in the woods alone. She realized, hey, all of a sudden I'm here. Where am I? And then these people are looking for her, and they'd find her. But this one time, I guess, And it got to be a joke among the group. Oh, we got to keep an eye on Jackie. She's, she gets up and sleepwalks sometimes and gets lost. And she was kind of embarrassed about it, she said.
Well, yeah, especially if she has no recollection of it. She doesn't know what's going on with her. Because for most people, if they did, if a person was to remember being abducted, they're probably not going to keep going back.
Well, after the third or fourth time, it got to be kind of a joke, and she was actually, it puzzled her so much that this was happening all of a sudden that, it started scaring her a little bit, and plus she was embarrassed, about it because these people would have to send people out to look for her and stuff.
Well, had you ever asked her if, she got scared maybe because she thought, well, what did I do? Was what I was doing, there have anything, with the summonings in them and everything, does that have something to do with it? Did she ever, question herself about that?
She said the reason why she was scared is that everybody else would be so concerned when they were actually out there looking for her and would find her. That's the part that scared her. When she would wind up out there, where she was at, she wasn't scared. All of a sudden, boom, she's by herself. She hears people calling for her and stuff. But it was just the concern that she could feel from the adult chaperones and stuff is the reason why she started kind of getting fearful of it. But also she was fearful of the embarrassment of it, because, teenagers.
Because now they're making fun of her, right?
Yeah, they're not making fun of her, but they, oh, God, we're going to have to keep an eye on you. What are we going to have to do? Chain you to one of the horses or, that kind of thing.
Because that probably is something pretty weird for all the kids, too. It's like every time, that they go camping, she mysteriously, goes missing and then is found.
But most times, yeah.
Right. So I wonder if they thought, is this girl trying to do this for attention? Or, maybe some of them thought, is she sleepwalking? I mean, I could just imagine, that there's probably so many scenarios that went through kids' minds.
So when I was old enough to, and we're talking about that, the shadow people thing and all this stuff, and she's telling me, she brought this up. So, and, I kept picking her brain throughout the years on this stuff too, but, for more and more detail. And I've written some stories on it too. And there's a lot of interesting accounts that happened once we started talking about this stuff and just before she passed away. And, I can go into detail on some of that too, but just interesting stuff. I would have shared death experience. When she passed away, and I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Let me go back to the camp out.
It's okay.
The big kicker was the last one that happened was, most of the time they'd find her pretty quick. This one time, they could not find her for a long time, and they were real concerned about it. Now, she's barefooted when they find her, as how she went to sleep in her sleeping bag and stuff. And
right.
One time they were looking all around for her, and I guess it took quite a bit longer to find her. And she could hear him calling for her off in the distance, and she was trying to yell back and realized, here I am again, what's up? And finally they found her, and it's like one of the chaperones looks up in the branch of this fir tree, and her sleeping bag is hanging over this branch up there like 12 feet up in this tree. And she didn't move from that spot because she could hear that they were looking for her, and she wasn't sure which direction, even though, it was light in the morning, which direction to go. So she waited for them to come to her. And she didn't know that sleeping bag was up there. So that even adds more interesting details to that particular story. But anyway, I guess one of the publications now, I've looked for the story. And I'm going to continue to look, but there's like the Lakeview area there, Orting, Puyallup, Tacoma, a lot of those have newspapers, but apparently one of the newspapers picked up on it and put it in there as kind of a, how they do on UFO sightings and stuff whenever they report something in the main newspaper, they kind of put that little angle to it, little green men and that kind of thing. You know how they do that even to this day.
Right.
Well, it ended up being a kind of a novelty story in this newspaper, and my mom was just, she said she was so embarrassed about that she thought about quitting the horseback riding club thing altogether because of, the sleepwalking incidents and just being embarrassed about the whole thing. But anyway, I guess it kind of stopped after that one for a time. So Anyway, so she goes on to have me, a few years later, and quits the horseback riding clubs and ends up having a family, and then boom, my earliest memory, other than the Kennedy assassination, is that I described to you on my first experience, which I can see every time I can see it replaying every time. I mean, just in every detail, it's kind of amazing to have a memory of something like that. But I think all that kind of ties in. I don't know if, because she's an open-minded person, that these things, observe us, want to know how our emotions are, what it's like to be a human being, or whether if they seeded us here, and it's like almost like an ant farm experiment that they observed, left it its own device. How's it going to evolve? How's it going to go? How are they going to get out of this situation? And all these things. And that, there's certain people that are anomalies here that know differently than to say, oh, it's because of Adam and Eve's sinning that these things happen, and discounting things. If you're open-minded, maybe you're kind of an anomaly and you're a magnet for these kind of things to happen. And so I really think because of those encounters that my mom had, that it kind of went on to me and carried over to me, whether if, I'm a part of, she was an observation subject, one that they select out of several on the earth or whatever, through those encounters that she had. And then, let's see how our offsprings go on beyond that point, because I'm open-minded.
Right.
Whether if it's got something to do with that or not, I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of how it all began with me, and I don't know what part of it you want me to go into detail on next, but there's quite a few things after that.
Right. Well, right now I want to talk, because we've got about 5 more minutes till we're at the top of the hour, and then we're going to go ahead and take our break. But so when do you start really, because I know you yourself have some psychic abilities yourself.
Yeah.
So when did you start really paying attention or realizing you had these?
Well, it was kind of natural on the aura thing. I'd see it was, and I remember vividly, it was always mustard colored. It was sometimes brighter than others, and sometimes more prominent, but there was always this mustard color, yellowish color, maybe a goldish color glow around the outskirts of everybody you see, and also animals. And
right.
But there would be some times where it would catch my attention that would be different. They would be brighter for some reason on some people. And I remember that. But I never talked to anybody about it because I thought they could see them too.
Right,
they were always
exactly.
that gold or mustard color, and sometimes they were brighter on certain people, like my certain friends that I had. It was more prominent, maybe a little thicker around the outside of them for some reason. Maybe that's what drew me to them, or whatever, as friends or whatever have you. But when I was 12, how I stopped seeing them was this. My grandmother belonged to the Unity Church, which, they study the teachings of Christ more than anything, about the healings. And if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could move the mountains. And, that's what Christ was trying to tell us. Break free from all the stuff that people bash into you, that you're an underling mindset person where, everybody else is above you and you have to go to them for the answers because you got the answers in you. And it's kind of like that thing. And she belonged to that church in Tacoma, and she insisted that me and my brother, that she could come and pick us up in Edmonds, which is about a 30-mile drive, to see these guests that were going to show up at her church. And I think they called them the Peace Pilgrims, but they were like college-age kids. They would go to different countries and different places and different cities with nothing but, a backpack, with clothes, change of clothes and stuff, but no script, no money. And they would be invited into these different places, and, and it wasn't like they were evangelicals or that kind of thing where they're constantly talking about what's in the Bible. It's just talking about, hey, what's good for you, and, are you feeling good today, and positive things. And for some reason, they were just always watched after when they were on these missions. So I forgot how long they were on these missions, but my grandmother wanted us to come down and watch this thing. So she comes and picks us up, and we show up at the church, and I think there was 5 or 6 of them. But anyway, they weren't in there when they we were kind of setting it up for the introduction of these people. And so we're all sitting in these church pews, and you know how you got the walkway between the pews that goes down to the podium, and then you can step up to the stage there. The guys up there talking about this mission that these kids, these college-age kids went on, and what it was all about, what it represents for them, and that we're honored to have them. And so he goes to introduce them, and everybody starts clapping. So everybody looks back like you're waiting to see the bride come down, with the bouquet, down the aisleway there. And we look, and the door opens up, and these 5 or 6 people are walking. They all have smiles on their face, and they've got this bright, bright red glow around them. Instead of this, gold or mustard-colored glow that I could see around everybody else, it was bright, bright red. And while they were walking, it would trail behind them, and in front was thinner, like the wind or something, was blowing like they weren't on fire or anything. But say if you had flames on you, if you were walking, the flames would be trailing behind you, right, but not in front of you. Well, that's kind of what it was like, and they were walking up to the stage real slow, and everybody's clapping for them, and I could see this around them. And as soon as they got up to the stage and stopped, it caught up to them, and it was proportionate all the way around them. I would say about 5 or 6 inches thick. It was real thick all the way around them. And I'm sitting there looking, I'm rubbing my eyes, it's bright, and I'm going, my God. I turned to my grandmother, my brother, and I says, what is it about them? It's red. It's red. What are you talking about, Scott? What are you talking about? The glow around them. It's red. Can't you see it? It's red. It's not the normal color. Oh, be quiet. I'll talk to you about it later. Shh, kind of thing. So we listened to them talk about this mission they were on. Well, shortly after she said that, I could not see it around them or the orange glow or the mustard-colored glow that's normally around everybody else sitting in the pews. I couldn't see it anymore. That was it. That was the end of it. After my grandmother says, what are you talking about? And then, boom, when we got out, I described, well, hey, I was able to see this glow around them like I see around other people, but it was real bright red. There was something different about these people. And, what are you talking about? So obviously she wasn't able to see that kind of thing. With the look on her face when I told her, this puzzled look on her face, somehow it kind of turned off the switch. And that was it. Boom. Can't see him anymore. Never have since. But it was a regular part of my life up until 12.
Wow. Very, very interesting. So, okay. Well, let's go ahead at this point and let's go ahead and take our break. And when we get back, we will talk a little bit about the Fat City investigation that we did together and then get into listening to some of these amazing EVPs.
Oh, okay. I hope they show up good the way that we're going to play them through the phone, but we'll see.
Either way, even if not, what I will do as well is on our Paranormal Connections page, I will download them onto that page. So for anybody who maybe can't hear them really well or would like to, listen to them yourself and see what maybe, you hear or what you think, they'll be right there, as well as the link to the actual website where you can find those.
Time's going back fast, isn't it, Christina? Because there's so much to cover, but I'm not going to be able to cover it all. But yeah, okay. So I'll let you direct what direction we go. I mean, there was another encounter I had, with the UFO thing that was just vivid. It happened when I was 24. But if we don't have time, maybe some other time we can get into it. But it was just a defining point in my life.
And thinking too, so we can put that in. But I'm also thinking that I may want to have you come back and have you be on Aliens, UFOs, and Beyond, because that's my other show that I do, and I think that your story ties in there really well too.
Like you said, I'm not looking to be in the spotlight, but once we get started, it's kind of like, well, I might sound crazy if I don't get into the resolve of this thing in the next deal that I had. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, no problem.
Yeah,
it's nothing about that. Like I said, I think that it's so intriguing. And again, my listeners, they love to hear people's, these stories from people. And so not only do you really still hear, but they're too.
I'll leave it up to you. I'm going to go and get a munch on a graham cracker and give my dog a piece of bologna so he doesn't start barking while I'm on the phone for the second half.
Okay, so we're going to break now, and we will be back in about 3 minutes, everyone. So grab yourself something to drink, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do, and we'll be right back.
All right, 3 minutes.
Okay.
and you're live.
All right, welcome back to Paranormal Connections. I'm Christina George, and we're back with my guest, Scotty Myers. Well, before we went to break, we were talking about, wow, his mom's, story, his kind of a little bit of his story. And so we're going to finish a little bit about that, and then he's got a couple other, things that have happened. Again, 2 hours, although people think that's a long time, we usually know that we run out of time every week, people telling their stories because they're just so amazing, and there's usually so much to it. So we're going to do those, and towards the end, we will, again, play the EVPs and go over my investigation that Scotty and I took part in Oregon at Fat City.
I look forward to that.
Diner. Yeah, so it was a really great one. So we will go ahead and let's go ahead and fast forward up into your 20s, correct, when you had your next UFO or abduction scenario, right?
Well, before that happened, I had one, I call them Oz factor events. It's just where, it's like that your surroundings are different for some reason. It's like something's trying to draw your attention that this moment is just for you kind of thing. And there's probably a lot of people out there that can say they've had the same experiences. But before I turned 20, I was 18, and I still lived with my folks. I hadn't ventured off on my own yet, and we lived in this mobile home out in front of this business we had. Now, the business had 5 acres of cars, so we had to have a chain link fence all around this the facility there so that people wouldn't try to break in and steal the cars. And it was 8.5 feet high, and it was a chain link fence, and it had 3 strands of barbed wire that pointed outward to deter any thieves thinking about breaking in and stealing the cars. Well, we lived in a mobile home out in front of the business. It was probably 10 feet from that chain link fence, so that we could keep an eye on the premises. And across the street was nothing but desert. It was all protected desert on the outskirts of Boise, Idaho, because the Oregon Trail had come through there at one time. So all these businesses are on one side of the street, and the other side of the street's nothing but desert. Well, anyway, this one morning, I'm asleep, and I'm having this dream that my mother's being attacked. She's screaming. It's just blood-curdling scream. I mean, in my dream, my heart rate's going, and boom, I got to protect my mom, and I can't make out the figure that's attacking her, but she's being attacked. So I get up in the dream to go and defend her, and then all of a sudden I hear this blood-curdling scream that's even louder than that scream shortly after that, and I wake up, and it's actually happening. I'm right in the middle of this scream that's going on, and it's in the morning, so the sun is streaming through the window in my bedroom, and my heart rate's already going because I had what went on in the dream. So my heart rate's going. I wake up, and I'm in my boxer shorts without anything else on but my boxer shorts, barefooted. I go running down to where I hear the scream, down to the end of the hallway there, and I go out to the back porch that faces off towards the chain link fence where the cars are all stored in the yard there. And we had 2 security dogs at the time that were Doberman Pinschers. They were mean dogs. They would be considered a liability risk now. I don't think anybody'd have these guard dogs in their yard now, because if they get out, they'll attack just about anything. But the only 3 people that could feed these dogs or go up to them or even pet them was myself, my brother, and my dad. And so I think it was on a Sunday, so we weren't going to be opening the business up. But my mom is in the middle of the scream still when I get down to the end, and I look out the back door there, and I see the situation. She's facing out through the fence, and she's in the middle of the scream still, and she had a little dog that was named Moochie Ann. It all of a sudden showed up on the porch one time when we lived in Kennewick, and so the dog was probably about 5 years old at the time, but it was just a little half poodle, half Afghan hound or something, and we called her Moochie Ann. And somehow that dog had crawled underneath the fence and was on the other side, couldn't get out, and these 2 Dobermans are on a dead run, and they're probably 25, 30 feet away, and they're going to tear this dog to shreds. Every time that Mom would let that dog out when those dogs were in the yard, she'd go up and tease them through the fence, and they couldn't get at her. And, it's something that had built up through some time. So I was aware of the situation just all in one instant. You know how they say that your life just passes before you in an instant when you're going off the edge of a cliff? It's
Right.
like this time stops.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm looking out there, and it's all of a sudden I'm like being pulled out of my body. It's like an out-of-body experience, and I can hear my own voice echoing through my head. My mother is not going to see this happen. She is not going to witness this happen. And I mean, it's just any second this dog's going to get torn up right in front of her eyes. So all I remember is stepping down the step next to where she was at, and then, boom, the next instant I'm on the other side of the fence. And I'm standing there holding this dog, and I'm looking behind me, and these other two dogs are completely stopped in mid-run. I mean, it was like taking a film and stopping it. But they were right behind me, and I had this dog in my arms, and she was still, and all of a sudden it was like somebody turned the switch on, and these dogs are right on me, and they're trying to jump up to get at her, and I'm holding her up over my head. Now, this fence is 8.5 feet high, so my mom's on the other side of the fence. I made eye contact with her because I figured I only had one shot only, and that was to throw the dog over the fence and into her arms. So I looked at her, and it was like this telepathic thing. Hey, be ready, here I go. Boom. So I threw her up over the fence and landed right in her arms. And the dogs were right up at the fence trying to get through there to get at her. I mean, it was like time had stopped, like I had made it stop. Somehow went through that fence because I never climbed that fence. I couldn't get back over. My mom had to come back through the shop, open it up to let me back through in order to get back in the house. So I did not climb that fence. I don't know how I got through it. Well, once we settled down, I go to talk to my mom, and once her heart rate went down and everything, I says, Mom, thank God you screamed that second time, because the first time I mixed it in with a dream and we were being attacked. She says, no. I had just walked out, and I saw what was happening, and I started screaming because I knew the dog was going to get torn up by those two dogs, and they were just right around the corner. And all of a sudden, bang, you were there, and you were on the other side of the fence looking at me to throw the dog over. But it was like a minute had passed by. Like I had a minute to do all this, but I didn't know how I got on the other side of the fence. It was the damnedest thing. I couldn't climb over that thing barefooted if I had to. You get tangled up in the barbed wire and the whole shebang. So somehow we're able to, when the moment's there and you have to, somehow you're able to pull off those things. And don't ask me how it works, but it had something to do with getting pulled out of my body for that instant and hearing my own voice saying, like an echo, she is not going to see this happen. And that's how close I was with my mom. We had incidents like that happen quite a bit, to where we knew what each other was thinking and stuff. But it's just amazing.
That is amazing. So, okay, so we get to, well, actually, where do we get, where you start to get this fascination with EVPs?
Well, my mom always had Fate magazine. Saga magazine was the big magazine back in the 70s of the UFO things and ghosts and all those things. She always had those publications around because of the incidents that I told you about that happened to her when she was younger and stuff. She had an open mind. There wasn't anything she could pass up in the store that she wouldn't buy that had these stories in it. And it just ended up getting passed on to me. It was like a regular thing to us. It was like, my brother wasn't into it. He'd say, oh, God, you guys are talking about that again. Just some people are open for it and some people aren't. But those that are have these amazing things happen. And we shouldn't overlook them because the answer to the meaning to our life is in there somewhere. Sometimes the more you look, the more you end up chasing your own tail because there's all these surprising things come in. But the more you look, the more you'll start seeing these amazing things happen. I'll tell you.
Wow. Right.
But that's how I got fascinated with EVP because it's, you can pick stuff up in photographs. Okay, so that's visual. But what about audible? You can do the same thing. You can pick things up from out of nowhere, whether if they be residual energy that makes these things happen, something that's playing out in the loop. It's like a film sitting in a film canister until somebody finally puts it in the right projector and plays it on the screen, which happens to be us walking along, and somehow we pick up on that. Whether it be a residual thing that once took place and it reanimates itself while you're there, or whether if it's, and also these happen too, is interactive things where there's actually spirits or a presence there that is forwarding these responses and making things happen. So to me, it's just fascinating because there are residuals and interactive ones. And also, like you said about John Burgess, I start looking into it. They know that you're tweaking around with these clips, and so they'll throw little surprises in there where it'll say things backwards and forwards, or if you slow it down, it'll say something entirely different, but it still makes sense, and it still pertains to what you're looking for. And it's just totally fascinating because, you know, in reverse speech analysis like Dr. John Burgess does, yeah, you could talk to somebody for 30 minutes, and, you know, it's a therapy session. You're trying to find out what's on their subconscious mind, so something will come out in reverse, you know, in that course of 30-minute stream of speech. But usually you only find like one or two little clips, and something will pertain. You can say, well, here it is. But these EVPs, sometimes they say something, you know, in reverse entirely that pertains also. I mean, it's just odd. It's almost like they've got an intelligence to make that happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've got some examples of that.
All right. So is there anything, you know, else you want, you know, other stories you want to get to before we start playing the some
I
of
think
these
I'll
EVPs?
take that second experience, the biggest experience, and it was a course of a whole evening.
Oh, wow.
It happened out in the desert. And, you know, but it's just going to take a while to describe and tell it right. I think I'll save that for, you know, sometime when you set me up for the other show.
The other show,
and also,
okay.
yeah, in my on my web page now, you said that it was finished and it took me a long time. Well, actually, I'm a slow typer, so a lot of the stories aren't in there yet. But that one is. It's in the stories pages, and it's there's something about you know, residual incidents from my mother's incidents of encounters with UFOs or something. Anyway, the story is in there, so they can find those stories in there.
Okay, great.
The second encounter when I was 24, the most important one. But we don't have enough time, I don't think, so.
Well, let's see, yeah, and then plus that one's kind of a long one. So we'll save that one for the other show, and we'll get you on, you know, here maybe within, you know, the next few weeks so that we can.
Yeah, we'll set up a date.
You can get, absolutely. So we'll try to do it sooner than later so that we can, you know, people who are listening can, you know, hear that part as well, because I think they'll be very fascinated as well.
Yeah, I'm not trying to showboat, but these are just things that got me interested in stuff. But anyway, let's go on to your the EVP thing, if you want to do that first, or the Fat City investigation that you were a part of.
Let's see, which one would be better? I think maybe. Let's actually go. We'll talk a little bit about the Fat City, and then from after those, we'll play the other ones. So. Okay.
Well, you want to tell them about how we got hooked up and the investigation we were on? I can chime in on some things that you might.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll take that, and then you can kind of go from once we got out there. So what had happened is a few years ago, I spoke at a UFO conference out in the Bay Area here in California, and Clyde Lewis was actually one of the speakers as well. And my co-founder and I, afterwards, we were hanging out with him and Ola Phillips and Ron Patton from Paranormal Magazine. So we were all hanging out, and Clyde found out that I was a paranormal investigator as well as a psychic. And although he said, you know, he had met many people who said they were psychics, he was still kind of a skeptic. But he had invited me to come out and investigate sometime when I was out in the area, and I actually have family and friends out there. So, I don't know, a couple weeks later, I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to. Next time I go out there to visit, I'll give you a call and we'll get together. Well, not too long after that, John Burgess called me and had said, hey, Clyde asked me to call. He wants to set up to have you come for an investigation. And basically what he wanted to do is to set up an investigation and kind of test my psychic abilities, which to me absolutely was okay. So I just told him I didn't want to know anything about the location. I just wanted, you know, when we got there, I'd show up and do it because I didn't want anything to interfere or anybody to say, oh, she did some research on the place or anything like that. So it was originally I thought it was just going to be myself and Clyde, and then he had asked Jonathan. I knew was going to be there because he did the reverse language, and then he asked me if the local group that he worked with could come out with us. That was Roger Cluton of Northwest Ghost Recon in Oregon. So we did. We got everybody together, and then Chris Reeves, who was there as well, a good friend of mine, and I had him on the show not too long ago, and then Scotty. So myself, Jonathan, and Roger, we all got together the night prior on a Friday night to do like a little pre-investigation, and I think Chris was there too. I'm not positive.
He was definitely there for the second one when I was there.
The second one I definitely know was there, but I think the first one it was just Jonathan, myself, and Roger. And so we went in there and decided to do a little pre-investigation. So what I did is, many people know, is I like to just walk around. So I went through and I walked around, and I grabbed, I started getting things so quickly that I grabbed some napkins, and I started jotting everything down. And I figured, okay, I'll jot everything that I get down, and then the following night we were going to meet up with everybody else, including Clyde. And at that point, I would give him those notes, and he could either validate or not whatever I got, and then we would do the investigation. So that's kind of what we did that first night. Then the second night, we all show up, and I take my notes, and I give them to Clyde, and his jaw kind of drops. And at first, I'm like, oh, gosh, I must have really be off or something. But it wasn't. I actually had I kept getting, I kept telling him it was either Vivian or Vivi. I kept getting Vivi, V-I-V-I, and he said that a lady that got murdered there was Vivian. There was something very particular about this one spot where they had a little booth. There's one booth. I said there's something about it I just don't really know. And I'll let Scotty kind of touch on that after. And so, a few other things. So we were able to get all of those things, and then we decided to get everybody together. We did the investigation. That's when I met Scotty, and we all decided to kind of do our investigation. And everybody was kind of just doing their little walkthroughs. And I'll let you take it from there. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, you guys did the preliminary investigation, and then I was invited, but I couldn't make it that night. But I was able to make it for the second night, which I'm glad I did. I got to meet you, and I already knew John Burgess, and of course Roger's a good friend of mine, and Clyde, and Chris Reeves too. I've worked with him a few times before. But anyway, it was interesting meeting you, and I think we met at the lounge or the restaurant across the street. And I wasn't entirely filled in either on what took place today, but it's in Multnomah Village, which is just a little trendy area. It's, the early 1900s, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
Built, and it's maybe, 3 blocks long. And they have these, 3-level buildings that some of them used to be flop houses back in the old days, I guess. But they turned them into, antique stores, trendy little cafes and coffee shops and stuff. And so, yeah, I knew a murder-suicide incident had taken place, but I didn't know any details beyond that. But Roger says, wow, we got some stuff. He showed me an EVP where, some of the employees from this Fat City cafe, it's called now, but it used to be called New Cafe back when the murder-suicide incident happened back in 1973. So it was a different ownership. But some of the employees are reporting a little bit of paranormal activity going on, is how Clyde caught wind of it, and so ended up leading us to the investigation. So, and quite a bit of it. So, anyway, Roger had when you guys were there for the first night, there's some incidents, I guess, of the pots and pans banging and stuff when the employees were there and stuff. Scared the hell out of them, but was unable to get any of that happening, no matter how much he asked. And so I guess you guys, I don't know, somebody in the group must have smoked cigarettes or something, so everybody decided to step out and take a break.
No, we went actually over to the ice cream parlor they had right there on the corner, because everybody was getting there. So we kind of Clyde wanted to go over the notes and stuff. And so we decided, since we were all going to go over there, we were going to leave our recorders on there at different places running. And when we came back, we caught these pots and pans bang. I mean, and it wasn't like just like, you know, maybe a little breeze. I mean, they were like clink, clink, clink.
Wait till you hear it, Christine. It's number 18F. But Roger handed it over to me now. I wasn't there that day, but he says, as soon as we walked out, you can hear us walking away from the door. All of a sudden, the pots and pans, bang, 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 bang. And it's like, wow, cool. It's not an EVP, but it's that. But I analyzed the EVP through some special software I have. And when you hear it, it's a different version than when you heard it. And I've got the original. I always have the original, so everybody knows I didn't add anything to it. But there's a sinister-sounding voice that just before those pots and pans bang says, I will not sit down. Bang, 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 bang. Like he was pissed that you guys were there in the investigation, or either pissed about that or that you were leaving. So you can go to that one if you want right now.
Sure. Let's see.
Let's see if number 18F. It's I will not sit down. It's the pots and anyway. We just told you.
Gotcha. Okay, hold on.
Christina. Oh, that's funny because I can't hear it through the phone.
Can everybody hear it? Could you hear that?
No, not through the phone. Maybe on the internet radio they can hear it.
Let's see. Tiffany, can you come in, or were you able to hear that at all?
I was able to hear it.
Okay.
And I'll check
the voice, the first clip it plays as it was, and then I focused in on that voice that came about just before the pots and pans banged. I hope you could hear that.
I could hear it really clearly. And
is that
again,
or what?
Yeah, that it's crazy. And again, when I was there, you know, you obviously had put it through more software since then, because we only heard just the pots and pans, and we thought, wow, that was pretty amazing.
I could hear it, but I pulled it out, and that's in there. I've got the original, so I have no reason to tamper with any of these. I'm able to hear the stuff, and I'm able to filter out certain sounds to where you can, you know, really view in on some of the stuff that's being said. But that's pretty amazing. I mean, Roger.
Okay, people are wanting to try to play it again. So hold on just a second. I'm gonna.
Or they can pull it up on the internet.
Right. We can do it as well, but we'll try to.
Yeah, you got to play it all the way through because it really focuses in on the voice at the last.
Right, and at the very beginning, you hear a little bit of people talking. That was because we had set it down and we were getting our stuff, and then you'll hear like a big bang when we close the door behind us, and then you'll start to hear everything.
Amazing. It does it when you leave instead of when you're asking it to when you're in front of it.
No, of course. Okay, so let's see if we can hear. Hold on. Yeah, that is a creepy voice. I don't know if people can hear it, but as I'm going to put this on a Paranormal Connection page along with the link to Scotty's website, so you'll be able to hear it.
Give Roger Cluton, most of these EVPs that I have on my website are mine, but some of them that we get together. So that one there, Roger picked up the pots and pans. I found the voice in it when he gave it to me to analyze it. But anyway, it's his EVP.
Yes, we definitely want to give credit, where credit's due, because he did get a lot. And in fact, we actually got an amazing photo when I was downstairs, because I was interacting with these spirits, and I kept saying, I saw, these couples down there. There was this one woman who was just, it was heart-wrenching because this woman was begging me to help her.
Well, maybe you think that we ought to tell them just a brief rundown on the history because,
Absolutely.
we didn't know. Yeah, the deal was back in 1973, there was this regular patron that hung out. Now, when you walk into the little cafe, there really isn't all that much room, is there? It's
right, yeah.
50s, and there's maybe 5 booth stations, and then it's got the bar with the stools that spin, and just a little cozy cafe, real good food too. Got all kinds of trinkets from the 50s. Anyway, so that's the street level, and then it has this old staircase that goes down into this basement. And there's an ice machine that's running all the time down there and stuff. And when you get to that stairway, it's just, if you have any gut meter at all, you're going to pick up on there's some bad vibes there. Well, apparently what happened was there was a regular patron. Her name was Vivian Robinson, 1973, and it was called New Cafe then, N-U Cafe. It was different owners. And she hung out quite a bit, and there was one special booth that she always hung out at that was her favorite, and you can go into detail on that here in a minute. But anyway, she was seeing a guy off to the side, apparently, when she split up with her husband. They weren't divorced yet, but she was seeing an older guy by the name of Bob Symes, and they were hitting it off pretty well. And for whatever reason, though, somewhere down the line, Vivian decided she was going to go back to her husband and must have given Bob the word or whatever, and he became disgruntled, and he knew that she hung out at this cafe quite often and what times and stuff, and so he shows up there with a .22 caliber, it was a pistol or a rifle, I'm not sure which. I've got it written in my website somewhere about the investigation. It's one or the other, but it was a .22 caliber. He shows up, she sees him, and he shoots at her, and I'm not sure if he hit her when she was upstairs or not, but she's fleeing away from him, but she can't go through the entryway because he just walked through and shot at her. So she goes running down that creepy stairway into the basement. He goes down, shoots her several times, finishes her off, and then kills himself. So the lady that owned the cafe, for whatever reason, didn't hear the ruckus going on, discovered the bodies when she went on a break from whatever she was doing, washing dishes or whatever, but for some reason she didn't hear the ruckus as it took place, and I guess there must not have been many people inside of the cafe at the time that it happened. It must have been clear of any patrons because she's the one that discovered the 2 bodies down in the basement.
It's kind of crazy because you would think she would have...
The bullet holes, you can say this too, at the bottom of the staircase are still visible to this day.
But you would think that with, being shot, like that, you would hear it, because like that's a small place, and a gunshot is pretty loud, and that's all cement down there,
Yeah, .22 caliber might sound like a firecracker, but who knows, I mean.
Right,
but,
right.
She's the one who discovered him, though. It was, it's in something about the Fat City Cafe, a publication about it, the story about it. But you and I weren't completely aware of all that until Clyde described it.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it.
But anyway, that took place, and a very emotional event because we picked up on a lot of stuff, and you picked up on it psychically, and there's more EVP to play yet, some very creepy stuff. So continue.
All right, so let's get to the next one.
Number 16.
16, okay.
And I got this one on the staircase, and it's a voice whispering, "That was the man who badgered me." That's all you get. It's just little, they pertain, but they're just little brief.
They can hear, like, that one is a little bit, let me try to play this once more. Hold on.
Yeah, you can hear it. It's an odd voice saying, "That was the man who badgered me." So in other words, you were thinking about this Bob Symes, and she keyed in on it because you were down in the basement at the time I recorded it. I was trying to call her spirit.
Right. Okay, let's try it again.
Down the stairs.
right there.
Yeah, I got that on the stairway.
Oh, absolutely. And interesting, there was this, body computer, there was this time that I went down there, in fact, when we were doing these EVP sessions, and, like, she's literally, like, showing me, like, her being, like, shot, like, showing me this whole thing, and she grabs her stomach, and, like, my stomach, I got the worst pain in my stomach. I, like, almost doubled over.
I was a witness. You came running up the stairs when I was looking through my EVPs on the computer. You came running up the stairs, man. Your stomach, you were very upset. You had to go running into that little restroom facility there. I don't know if you lost your dinner or not, but you were. Yeah. I could tell by the look on your face that you either saw something that was terrible or picked up on something that was terrible. I could tell.
Oh yeah, and I think it was both at the same time. So it was, pretty bad. It was like, me seeing it, but then experiencing the pain at the same time, and the pain was so bad. And I remember just coming up, and everybody said, "Well, you want to stop?" And I'm like, "Nope, we got, keep going through this." So yeah, it was very interesting investigation.
Well, also what's interesting is, there's poltergeist-like activity or physical objects, reportedly from some of the employees that get moved around. And obviously, thank God, Roger was smart enough to have his recorder on your first investigation, because there was. It knew that you wanted to see some of that, and it didn't show you right in front of your face. But as soon as you walked out, bang, there was the pots and pans bang, and it's just amazing. Absolutely. You guys are the only ones there. But the most amazing EVP we picked up, Christina, and I think I sent it to you, is the second evening, you and Clyde. Now, you both have your different styles on whether, if you're trying to release whatever is trapped there. I know you both have your...
And have crossing over spirits, right.
To me, it's residual energy. To me, it's trapped there because there was a traumatic event that happened, but then when the spirit goes on, we all go on to something else, but we're still breadcrumb to that history of all these different reality settings we've been at throughout time, and that somehow that stuck there is what I believe. Now, you might believe something else, but something had to be freed out of there, because people can pick up on that stuff. That's why there's the activity. And so for those that, it sees that here's an open-minded person or somebody that's keen to this kind of stuff, it'll replay out that bad energy.
Oh, right.
That bad activity
definitely not,
one time.
Not
and
a
that
good
was
one.
the case with us.
Right.
So the most interesting EVP I got, though, and because we're running out of time, is the one that says "Free Me." Now, you and Clyde were both down in the basement again, and you were calling out to Vivian. I think it says it on the recorder. You can hear you. And so I go walking down with my recorder after picking up. That was the man who badgered me, and there was one that says, "Come to the hospital," which maybe we can play and stuff. But so I go walking down the stairs, and you and Clyde are both calling out to Vivian. And there's an ice machine that had this 5-gallon bucket, and apparently it had sprung a leak or something previously, and so they had this 5-gallon bucket collecting the water that was dripping out of the hose that goes to this ice machine that's running down there. And so that was, you could hear that dripping all night. But as you were talking and asking for Vivian's spirit, I noticed that water started kind of spraying out of there. It started dripping faster, and that something was going on back there in the corner in the basement. So I went back there with my recorder while you guys were in the background calling the spirit of Vivian, and I thought, something's happening over here, and you can hear this spirit saying, "Free me," in this real emotional voice. And after she says that, you can hear this evil hissing and snickering. It really shocked me when I heard that, but you can play that.
Right, and I was really upset because I was telling Clyde that this woman, Vivian was downstairs, and I said, she wants me to cross her over, and we were discussing that, and he said, she told you that? And I said, yeah, and so we both went down to try to see if we could get any EVPs or any kind of interaction, and then, of course, after we found out we got all this, I could, literally hear all this stuff and what she was telling me at the time, but, nobody else could until we got these EVPs.
Well, listen to this one, because, you can hear you guys talking and stuff, and that ice machine, that water out of that pipe started dripping. It was actually interfering with it or something, and this came through. So it's like her calling out or reenacting calling out of, "Hey, I need to be freed from this." or whatever, and you could hear this evil sounding, hissing and snickering. I mean, play it all the way through because I think I was able to get it to come out better towards the end of the deal. But play that one.
Okay.
If you haven't heard it.
Here it is.
Number 17.
Hold on. When I was here earlier, we were allowing people to actually be able to hear you. Can you give us some more communication? All right.
Well, you could hear it, couldn't you?
Yeah, I can hear it. And again, I'm not sure if other people can, but we're going to put these in. I could definitely even hear the dripping, like he said. And that hissing and that snickering is what really got to me. I mean, I pick voices up all the time. But the next one is on the next investigation. Chris Reeves gave me like maybe 30 minutes worth of tape that he had gotten. So this one, the credit on this one goes to Chris Reeves, but you hear this voice calling out the violence after he asks, is there anything you want to tell me? It's number 19, and it pertains to the area, too. You might find that one interesting. It's pretty clear. It's number 19. Okay. Let's try that one. Here we go.
The violence.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is.
And all of them are negative. That's the terrible thing about it. I mean, you want to pick up, everybody that has these terrible things happen in their life, but in their life, it's a terrible thing. It's a tragedy. It's an emotional thing. But they also had good things happen in their lives, too, and you'd like to hear some of that, but you don't pick it up in a place that has a history, an event that took place like that, do you?
No. Yeah, and everything we got was negative from there, not anything, good. And just the feeling that you get there for sure wasn't good.
It's amazing.
Okay, so number 20, I see gone to the hospital. You want to?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear that one, maybe through doing the way you're doing it, but give it a shot. You can hear this voice, gone to the hospital, and that was right on the steps where those bullet holes are.
Okay, let's try that one.
Sure, I got that whisper. Sure, I got that whisper.
I definitely, you can hear where it's enhanced.
Yeah. Well, and we got a bunch more, but I just those are some that I sent you. But there's some other good EVPs I sent you if you want to play some of those real quick that are real clear that are from something else. But that Fat City investigation was interesting meeting you there, working with Roger and Clyde and Chris Reeves and Jonathan Burgess, and I'd like to go back again sometime.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'll be out there, sooner than later, and we'll all get together and do something again. We had a great time. So, okay, so which is a good one you want to? I see number 13. It says, but she can't go home.
Why don't we go to the first one? Go to the first one. This is where Roger and I were going up. There's this mausoleum in this 100-year-old cemetery where we've gotten pictures. And the thing about cemeteries is it's not because the graves are there. I think that what causes it is all the emotional energy there. It's the people that are buried there, and the people that are still alive thinking about the people that are buried.
They go there crying
and all that emotion kind of brings things out. But we were getting these pictures of this lady that looks like dressed like Morticia Addams, you would see on the Addams Family. She showed up on 2 or 3 different pictures that we got by this mausoleum. So we approached this mausoleum at midnight, and I'm just a little ahead of Roger. We get up to it, and I got my recorder on, and we're walking along, and when I got around the corner of this mausoleum, I thought I heard where there was some girls giggling or something, where maybe they snuck out of the house and they were smoking cigarettes or having a little beer party or whatever. And I thought, wow, we crept up on something going on here. But I didn't say anything to Roger. I just heard it for a second. And Roger all of a sudden goes, did you hear that? And I said, what? And he says, that lady's voice. And all of a sudden I hear this lady's voice whispering in my ear saying hi in that. And Roger was hearing it, so it was like she was going back and forth between us. And so I went back and listened to the recording, and there's a lot of stuff on there. And it was during that time I thought I heard where there was some gals around the corner there, maybe having a little beer party going on or something, but it was actually the spirit. So anyway, after Roger said that, it was, wow, that was a disembodied female's voice. And as soon as he said that, there was these leaves that were piled up and raked up because it was November, I think. Anyway, there was these leaves, and all of a sudden these leaves started just flying everywhere. It was like, what the hell? And so I was definitely trying to get her attention, whatever it was. And so anyway, went back and reviewed the tape, and so when we first got to the mausoleum, I said, hey, take a picture. And all of a sudden you could hear this, Roger saying, well, did you hear that? And there's this lady saying, I love you. She's whispering. And then yeah, I think I heard something. And all of a sudden you can hear this, she's saying hi. She's whispering hi in my ear. And you can hear it on there. Well, anyway, I picked out the EVP. What she said when we first got there is Emily. So I don't know if that's her name or what. But anyway, you can play that one. It's pretty clear.
Okay, sure. Let's play that one. Hold on. Here we go.
Goose Pimples, take a picture. Yeah. I heard something. I heard a ring out. Tell me. I heard it.
That's very clear if I love you, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, number 5 is a good example, too. There's this young guy that was buried. His name's Casey, and every time I'd walk through the cemetery with my dog, you'd see the family was there, and, I got to look, and you get curious, and little toddlers that must have been his kids, and, you could just feel the emotion. And you could tell that they couldn't afford a good headstone yet, because this went on for like a half year, but they were always there, like almost every other day at this gravesite. And they'd leave little notes, trinkets, a picture of him. His name was Casey. So this one time Roger and I show up, and we're going to go to that mausoleum, that same mausoleum again, to try to get more. And we walk past, and he says, hey, this is where this Casey was buried I told you about. And he has one of those lights, that charges when the sun's out. And so, eternal lights or whatever at night is shining there. So we stop, and Roger and I are talking about the grave, and you can hear this. It almost sounds like a pig squealing. You'll hear it real clear. And it's like, what the heck was that? So I went back and analyzed that, and I slowed that part of it down. And it's actually, he says, see, I'm pushing up the daisies. And you play it backwards. It says, you can laugh, you pathetic little flake. Just that little segment of that pig squealing, that sound, says all that. So just play that and you'll hear it. It's just
Which
odd.
one is that one?
Yeah, it's number 5. It says, see, I'm pushing up the daisies.
Okay.
That's not a freshman.
And see, on that one, once because you play the clip and then you've isolated just what the
I isolated that.
saying.
You can hear that pig squealing, couldn't you?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird, like when you isolated it very clear. When you're trying to just listen to like the whole clip, sometimes it's hard. But when you isolate it, boy, it really brings it forward. And
he's got the sinister voice. It says, "See, I'm pushing up the daisies. You can," and then play it backwards. It says, "You can laugh, pathetic little flake." I mean, come on.
And how crazy is that? I was interesting enough. Rick Anham is one of my PPRS investigators and runs our Australia branch of PPRS, and he does our EVPs, our EV specialist of our team. And we were talking about this. I had him on the show, and because we find that a lot of my shows, I end up having a lot of EVPs.
Oh, Clyde hasn't come through a lot too on his show. It's amazing. It
has seemed, I think, over like maybe this last 6 months to a year, it seems to have decreased. But we were going through a time, I think, like it's maybe the beginning of the year, and oh my gosh, there were so many that my listeners and the people in chat would be, messaging me, telling me all of them that we're getting this. Are you hearing this? Did you just hear that? And so Rick would download the episode, the podcast, and go through them. And
you can get them. I've got some off the Clyde show when he was down at that newspaper building, by the way. But number 3, we're running out of time, but is one of the first ones I got. It takes a while for you believe in this stuff, and you go get your recorder, and it takes a while, but once you start getting them, you get more and more and more. Your recorder kind of builds up energy or becomes comfortable to them. I'm not sure which. But finally I got my first one with this recorder, and then, boom, the rest is history. I get them all the time. But this is the first one. I'm walking through a cemetery, and, what's odd is I always say the date and the time and where we're at, for filing purposes on the recording. And so I'm fumbling for the date. It's like I couldn't remember what the date was. You can hear me kind of fumbling. Well, during that time when I'm trying to remember the date, this voice comes in, and it's sarcastic. It says, "Dumb, got no data." Like, you got no data. Like you. So listen to this one. I mean, they've got a sense of humor. I mean, they're sarcastic. It's funnier than hell. But listen to this one. It's pretty clear. It's number 3.
All right, here we go.
24th September 2011.
He's making fun of me because
nothing like them trying to tell you off, huh? Like just making a joke out of you.
Yeah, greenhorn at it at the time, so I forgot the date, and he's chiming in. I didn't find that until it's like midnight in the cemetery, so I didn't find that until I looked over the tape. It's funnier than hell. It's kind of creepy knowing that you were by yourself, and that came through though, and so clear. But another interesting one here is, and we don't have time to play them all, but I'm working on establishing contact with deceased loved ones and relatives of people, and you get them to think about that person, have a note in their hand and read it, that they got from them one time or something like that, and try to get that energy to come out. And it works on certain individuals where they get something that pertains that only they know, information from deceased loved ones. Well, the best one that I ever got, and we've gotten several from Roger's brother, Monty, who passed away, and we finally got one from my mom when I was down where I scattered her ashes. So I've got both of them on this one, so you got to play it all the way through. But
okay,
I show up where I scattered my. Yeah, it's number 4. And my mom, second I turned the recorder on, I left it there for 15 minutes. The second I turned it on and walked away, is where I found the deal. It says, "I love you, my son," in a real drawn-out voice. And she knew I was coming and saved up, the bits and sounds. She was sound in the background. She was able to store up to say that. And then Roger's brother came through. I added that to the clip, and you can just hear that one real clear. "Roger, I love you," because he's been trying so hard to get contact from his brother, and finally it came through real clear. So you can play number 4 if you want.
Okay, let me just, because we only got
It's got those two on it, but it's different versions of it.
Okay, we only got just 1 second, so let's do this. Well, I definitely could hear the one I love you. I love you sound. I could definitely hear that one. But as I said, I will post it up so we can, let everybody else take a listen. That plus all the other ones. And we're out of time, but Scotty, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I will message you tomorrow and send you some dates. We will get you on as soon as possible for aliens, UFOs, and beyond, so you can go ahead and talk about the rest of your story. Because I really think the other stuff with the UFOs, all that stuff is going to be amazing for those listeners as well. So thank you again so much for coming on the show, and we'll have you on real soon.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure, and we need 5 hours, I guess, to cover this stuff.
Pretty much my lifetime. How can you ever?
It's like clipping mid-sentence because there's just so much to talk about. But it was real fun, and I enjoyed it. And, I'd like to be on that show. We got to make sure that it's a date that works, though. So,
it's a Wednesday night, same
right away.
Yeah, it's on Wednesdays, same time, same everything else. So, I'll send you some dates I've got available. You look through those, whatever works for you, we will definitely work out.
All right, and they can look up the website. Second page has got all of the EVPs, and they aren't all on there. What I'm doing is typing in the story, so when you click on one of them, it tells the story, where we got it, how we got it, and that's the part that's taking the longest. I've probably got 100 of them in there now, but I've got like 250 I'll have eventually posted in there. And there's paranormal photography with the stories on that, too, all kinds of interesting photographs and stories and stuff. So just look your way through it. It doesn't cost a dime.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so for everybody, they can go and check out the evpmuseum.com and take a look. Great site. And if you want to find out any other information, everything is on there, all the stories, everything. And, again, I will post the links that I have as well as the EVP downloads. Take a look, check them out, and give me your feedback, and I'll let Scotty know what you think. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us for our first show of 2015. We will be back next week, and we're going to be talking about the Sloss Furnace event coming up. Going to have some great guests. So, everybody, we will talk to you next Monday. Good night, everyone. Have a great night. Good night, Scotty.